This is the Watchmen podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about episode 5, Little Fear of Lightning. Hello, neighbours. Are you ready for the truth? This is TV Podcast Industries. We're watching Watchmen, episode 5, Little Fear of Lightning. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
Hello there, fellow watchers. I'm one of your other hosts, John.
Oh, there's other people with me this time. I'm so happy.
It's not you, it's us, I swear. It's just like, okay, yes, the smell doesn't help, but
Hey. So you have me in one room over in Ireland, you have Chris in another room in Ireland, and we have John in Switzerland. This is the first time I think we've done a three-way international run like this, have we? Yeah?
It's not the first time I've done a three-way, but that's besides the point.
All right, Chris. All right, personal life.
Too much information.
Absolutely. That might make it into your own American hero story in future, Chris. There was certainly some stuff going on in this episode that should have probably been left at home.
If I pass out as well, it's because the cleaning fluids are probably all sort of seeping into my brain.
Moving out of your house in Switzerland and moving back to Ireland. So we'll all be in the same country at least for the next episode.
Out of our house, Derek.
That's true. I've already moved. I'm gone. Well, welcome back, fellow watchers. If you don't know, this is our spoiler-filled discussion about the 5th episode of The Watchmen. We're about just over halfway, actually, into the Watchmen series. Only 9 episodes in the series, which is really interesting that we're getting to this point with a massive reveal and loads of stuff going on in this episode. First off, I do want to say thank you once again to another one of our patrons who's joined us over on patreon.com. Oren Dix, who's now supporting us over on Patreon. Thank you so much, guys. Want you to also say thank you to all of our patrons so far.
Thank you so much, everyone. That's it's so good to get your support. So thank you multiple times, fellow watchers.
Yes,
absolutely.
Without your help, we could not keep the lights on, because right now we are supporting lights on in 3 different houses.
Exactly.
I am literally in the dark because of the crazy Swiss rule that you have to take the light fittings. So I've got a lamp and then the 2 hall. And I've got to get rid of them at some point as well.
That's right, I have to disconnect those as well.
Happy days, fellow watchers. Happy
Good,
days.
huh? Good.
I would probably give a sanguine, fairly critical appraisal of this.
But we do want to say a massive thank you to all of you that support us over on Patreon. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. The other way to support us, as we always say, a great way to support us for free is just share the podcast. Share any of our posts about the podcast over on Facebook, over on Twitter. You can go to our website and share it into Reddit, wherever you want to share our podcast. Hopefully you'll find more listeners for our show and for what we talk about over the last 438 episodes, I think we are now, which is pretty massive.
Just slightly.
Yeah, loads of shows that people should be interested in listening to.
So, Derek, do we want to jump into this beautiful podcast, this beautiful episode? So, as always, so we do not deviate with history or time or any of the wibbly wobbly in between. Do you want to give us the episode details and what they gave us?
Absolutely, yes. This episode was written once again by Damon Lindelof, this time with Carly Wray. Carly's written for Constantine, Westworld, and with Damon Lindelof on Leftovers. And interestingly, she's also rumoured to be working on one of the Game of Thrones spin-offs for HBO. There's been one confirmed, one cancelled, and another one in the works. And Carly Wray is supposed to be responsible for it. Interestingly, on IMDb, it's called the Carly Wray Game of Thrones spin-off, which I really like. So maybe she's showrunner. You never know. The episode was also directed by Steph Green. Steph has worked on 2 episodes of The Watchmen, one later on in the season. We spoke about her back when she directed season 2, episode 2 of Luke Cage, because she's done tons of work over in Ireland, where we're all from. She made her first short film over in Ireland and won an Oscar for it. Got nominated for an Oscar for the short film. So we're aware of her work over in Ireland. So interesting to see that she's now working in HBO and over there with Watchmen as well. So very cool people behind this week's episode.
Yes, and you can definitely see some of Steph's touches on this one, which is a bit more human orientated, especially at the beginning. And I'm interested to see where Carly's Game of Thrones goes, because we lost the dragon one, but now we've got the Targaryen one.
Yes, exactly.
But isn't that also a dragon one?
Of course
they're really all dragon ones, but the one that we lost was going to be the big dragon one, and now we've just the Targaryen war one. Anyway, this is not the Game of Thrones podcast. This is the Watchmen podcast.
Exactly. Not yet. Not yet. John, do you want to tell us what the official episode description for this episode is?
Sure. The origin story of Looking Glass is revealed, as is the truth behind the greatest hoax in American history. The smartest man in the world plots a daring escape.
Pretty simple plot structure for this week's episode, really, isn't it? It is basically the origin story of Looking Glass. That's kind of exactly what it is. It's mostly all that's in the episode, really. I hear it ticking.
The doomsday clock has been set to 5 minutes to midnight.
Chris, at 5 minutes to midnight, what's your big point?
For me, it's really the history is confirmed, or the history of this alternate universe is confirmed. We weren't entirely sure how the squid had played into this. Now, to give a bit of background and the rationale of why I'm kind of calling this history confirmed is in the very last pages of, and I think it's only just a couple of panels, of the Watchmen graphic novel, which this is the continuation of. Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias' plan was to send a giant squid, an extra-dimensional squid, to attack New York to bring the world together. And we kind of guessed, and we'd been from the Pedopedia files, kind of the scale of what happened in New York in this alternate universe. We get history confirmed here. We get to see the history of New York. We get to see what happened to the people in Jersey, like just a few miles away from New York.
Yeah.
This is going to be different for people who watch the Snyder film. There was obviously some controversy, some discussion on the internet about Zack Snyder not using that ending in the film. One of them being that he didn't feel that the giant squid attacking New York could be pulled off correctly and look good on film.
Yeah. Says the man behind so many pure visual effect movies like that. What?
Exactly. That's one part. But also,
so
like,
weird.
looking at it here, and Derek, I'm going to let you comment on this, because this is something we just talked about just before we started recording.
Yeah.
It looks awesome.
I think it looks cool as hell, because the reveal as it goes back, you know, if you've only seen the movie, and a lot of people only caught up by watching the movie and then jumped into the series, because the movie's only 2 hours commitment, reading the book is significantly more. How they stage the scene where we have Wade standing just with his grabbed clothes, everything destroyed around, and blood coming out people's ears, and just keeps panning further and further back to the city of New York. And awesome Frank Sinatra's New York playing as the reveal of this massive squid sitting in the center of the city, almost perfectly represented from the comic book. Almost looks exactly like you saw it in the comic book. I think it looks cool. And I remember back when the movie was released, Zack Snyder saying, "I'm actually not going to do the squid. I don't think he can pull it off." And everybody kind of going, "Yeah, he's probably right. Yeah, he's a pretty big director. He'd know if you could pull this off or not." And he's decided not. He's probably right. They'd never be able to make that work. So fair dues on a TV budget. I know HBO have a lot of money. I know they put a lot into this show, but I think they've done a great job representing this massive moment from the comic book that will freak a couple of people out who watch the movie and are going, "What's that again?"
Say
what?
Say squid? Say what? Squid rings, anyone? No, the good side of this is, if anyone wants calamari in New York, it's cheap as chips.
It falls from the sky now as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Extra-dimensional squid sky.
Yeah.
That didn't go down very well though in the advert for bringing people back to New York. You know, the way we like our squid now is with a little butter and a little lemon. That didn't go down very well. But I have to say the whole staging of it as a scene, I think, is brilliant. If you remember the comic books, the first moment when we see Wade arriving, he's talking to the gang that was present right throughout the comic books. The Top Knots, they're called. Weirdly now adopted by hipsters, the top knot on top of their head. Back then, they were kind of the version of punks that had survived into the 80s. They were really evil bad guys and gangs. So the minute you see them, you're back in the 80s. Didn't even need that Hoboken 1985 up on the screen. You know you're going back to that time. And on the wall behind them, they have an advert for Pale Horse, which was the band that was playing Madison Square Garden on the night of the attack in New York. So many little references that are pulled out here by the stage design or set design. Really cool to have that. And then finally, as after the explosion. And I do wonder, we know that, or we think that Wade was protected because he was surrounded by mirror, and that's what he thinks. That's what he's been spending the rest of his life effectively wearing this mask. That's actually my point in this area, wearing this protective mask over him. He feels that it's because he was surrounded by mirrors, but he's not the only person alive within that area either. As it pans back through the Ferris wheel, which interestingly also named the atomic clock, which I thought was quite cool. But as it pans back there, you do see other people who've survived for various reasons, I guess. So it wasn't just Wade, which I thought was
interesting. Absolutely. I like how that's also carried through. I like the fact he's got, foil in his cap, during the, sort of the round circle, therapy session. And, I thought that was cool. And the fact that it ultimately, as you say, becomes his alter ego with, Looking Glass, and the mirrored sort of mask, the equivalent of Rorschach.
Exactly.
This was my point as well, to be honest. It was the squid in New York. Just that reveal of the juicy tentacles through the skyscraper, and then leading to the big, squid on one of them. But also just, I think the whole opening was, amazing. It felt really epic with, just the intimacy of Wade and the top knot sort of girl, where she steals his clothes and then he comes out and everyone is kind of, or most people, are lying down dead with effectively blood from any orifice that will bleed, I suppose. I just think as an opening, it really ramped things up. It was, I just thought it was really epic. It really got your attention right away. And then you get that reveal of the squid. So yeah, what a fantastic opening.
Absolutely. And without a doubt, I loved that moment when she steals his clothes and he's standing there and it's the mirror image of himself shouting back at Wade, telling him he's being an idiot, telling him he's sinned, telling him he deserves everything he gets now, and he's still saved from the attack, effectively. I thought that was fantastic. I thought it was really well staged as a scene. For
me, the questions that start to come out is what saved people? Why are some people alive and some dead? Mm-hmm. We know, and we'll get to some other points later, who and what the squid is. And by who, I mean who was controlling it.
Right.
His name was not Simon the Squid. It could have been Simon the Squid. We do not know for sure. We will never know.
Just this guy going out in a big squid costume, walking around the streets, shaking his arms. That wasn't as impressive as you thought it was going to be, is it?
Yeah. It sounds like a children's TV squid. He goes, "Hi kids, look at your parents.
My name's Simon.
I'm here to spill blood out of your nose and eyes. Yay!"
Oh my god, that'd be brilliant. Sorry, on a complete tangent, if any of our listeners have ever played Control, there is some kids' cartoon puppet kind of used in that to tell stories in a very horrific and scary way, and that's what I could just see. Simon the Squid attacking New York. Simon the Squid goes for a walk in New York and by accident kills people.
Fantastic. That sounds like I'd really enjoy that.
Yes. But anyway, so where I was getting with that point was it'd be interesting to see how the selection was made. Like, what is that, the AB factor, of, people surviving versus not surviving? Was it being having some form of reflection away from the psionic waves? Or was it certain people were targeted, certain chromosomes, certain genetic traits, all those things which will come out over the next while?
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting because there's definitely, and again, definitely we'll talk about it in a later point. There's definitely a plan. And I think there's a known reaction that's there, but we're left as the audience watching this scene going, but why is that guy over there standing beside 20 people in the wide open? How is he alive? Or how is that woman alive? So, really, really interesting. Guys, is that all three of us that have talked through our points in this particular
I think
Yes,
so.
It was a squid point.
Or a squid pun. or I don't know. I'm trying to come up with something. It was tentacular.
There you go. Very nice. Very nice. Interesting. There is a name for the mask that Wade wears. It's called reflectitine, which is
okay. It's not Simon then.
Not Simon, no. Do you remember, like, people were talking about it the first time they'd seen the character and they were saying, oh, I'd love to dress up like him for Halloween, basically, when they were going out and wearing costumes. They were saying that would be a cool costume to wear. But this particular product doesn't exist in the real world. It's effectively a breathable mirror is what he's wearing. So, so you hear that he's getting it from the same place that he's getting the alarm. That's possibly could be warning of squid attacks, for Wade. So, so interestingly, these are items that are on sale to the public to protect them from something that actually may not have happened. So
it does sound like unobtainium.
Reflected. Weirdly, unobtainium is a true metal, I found out recently.
Yeah, because James Cameron makes real things. Everyone just likes slagging it.
Exactly. He chose something real, yes.
True. I will die on the cross for Avatar 2, 3, 4, 5. I will withhold judgment.
Okay, good.
But Avatar 1 was a good film.
I will not die on the cross for Avatar.
Me neither. Sorry, Chris, you're on your own.
Give me Pocahontas by Disney any day.
I'm more of a Fern Gully kind of person, to be honest.
Oh, I hate you guys. But hark, is that what I hear in the distance? A tick-tock?
No, it's a squid called Simon.
Oh, okay, right. He's just actually, that's his pocket watch?
No, he's frying on the barbecue.
Nice.
The doomsday clock has been set to 4 minutes to midnight.
At 4 minutes to midnight, it's our medium-sized point for the episode. Something not as big as the main point of the episode, I suppose. I'm going to kick this one off with the support group because over the course of our 400 episode, we've actually seen quite a lot of support groups in various TV shows.
Strangely, yes.
Yeah, it does happen quite a lot, but I like that Wade is leading the support group. It's very like an Alcoholics Anonymous. Everybody comes in and shares their experiences and they try and...
It's a squid social.
It's the squid social, yes, something that kind of way, yeah. But it's interesting that we have Wade leading it and saying, follow me and you'll get enlightenment. You'll be able to get out of the horrible situation that you're in. Yet we know, because we saw it earlier on, that inside his hat, he's still wearing his tinfoil hat, basically protecting him from something that doesn't exist. He's still as absolutely terrified as everybody else that survived the situation in New York. Yet he's telling all the other members of the support group, I'll teach you how to not be fearful, which is interesting. Yeah.
It's really interesting to see the son of one of the survivors of the squid incident, the interdimensional event, the IDE, which they've referred to in the Pedopedia, which is the forums that we share on our group every now and again. But it's interesting to see his whole bit of how his mother was the victim and how she survived, but she passed on her PTSD to him.
So.
Yeah, okay, because this is the one I'm like, huh?
So what he says in the group is, I read this article, and the article says there's this thing called genetic trauma where you inherit the pain of your parents. Now, I was born 10 years after the incident, but I feel the pain of my mother. And that really strikes me as this whole concept of, I read an article and now I have the condition, is what it sounds like to me. So I'm now joining your support group for people that actually experienced it, and telling you that my feelings of second-hand experiencing of it are just as bad as your feelings of actually experiencing it. And I'm calling BS on that, man.
But no, I don't agree with that, because that's the same as people who claimed in the Tulsa incident who were the next generation.
Okay.
And weren't involved in it. It's exactly the same.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John.
So for me, this was Lindelof putting off a bit of I am am I a millennial? No, I'm not. I am.
You are, yes.
It doesn't matter. You're not giving yourself that tag.
You're our token millennial, Chris.
Okay, I'm the token millennial in this group. The generation, anyway. This is, I think, a bit of a poking fun at the internet culture.
Okay.
Where I wasn't a part of that event, but your pain is transferable to me, and my pain is still as worthwhile as the pain you're suffering.
Yeah.
Gen X invented the internet. We are the internet savvy.
Well, remember, there is no internet in the Watchmen world. They don't have the internet because they pull back from technology. That's why he says, I read an article, and it's not on BuzzFeed. He read it on an actual newspaper.
So there are these events like Sandy Hook, for example, where you have this, and then not just the immediate family or the immediate people who were involved and actually have the trauma of what happened. You then have these people on the internet who are in no way involved, no nothing, but they like, your trauma is my trauma. My trauma is just as big and as powerful and as hurt as you. And this is why I think Damon's going with this. In that, like, I think it's a bit of a, he doesn't poke fun at it. No. He's just saying, it's like, no, their pain sometimes can be, but it's not actually as real as the guy who was there naked in the middle of Jersey when the squid hit.
With real people dead at his feet that he'd just spoken to a moment ago, with the group leader who brought him and a bunch of kids from out of the city into New York, most of them all dead as well. How's he getting home? What's going on? Yeah, really properly traumatic experience for him.
So that's where I kind of saw, like, I think it was just a bit of a wink wink nudge nudge.
Yeah.
I don't think it wasn't a direct, but we did know that Damon was going to be a bit controversial and poke a few things on this one. So I think that this was a very subtle poke.
Yes.
I didn't get that at all. I just thought the support group was the driver for him meeting the lady there.
Oh, yeah.
And that it was just saying that there were support groups around because of the incident, because, as well, it is still existing because we've had the squids falling from the sky. So it's not a past event. It's a past event with trauma with the threat of it happening again. And it does on a little small scale, full deep fried calamari all at once. So, like, that's what I thought. I mean, I wasn't really thinking it was a conversation about sort of people joining on a bandwagon or whatever. I just read it like that.
Yeah, no, what I was meant was that it was particularly just about the son who his mother's trauma had transferred to him. The rest of them they were all old enough to be there. It was just the comment by the guy who's 20 something and going, my mother's pain transferred to me genetically because I read an article and I heard that to be true.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, we've talked about it more actually on our feedback episodes, that what we've said is with Damon Lindelof and the writers, the whole writers' room, what they're kind of doing really is poking fun at everybody. They're certainly not targeting millennials. They're certainly not targeting any other generation. They're not targeting anybody who's on the right or the left. They're targeting everybody who's on every side. And if you feel offended by what happened because that kid might represent your group, he's also poking fun at somebody else in a couple of minutes who we're actually going to talk about next. He's poking fun at some left-wing people and some right-wing people and how they plan to take care of the world and how they continued Weit's plan, I suppose. So he's certainly not saying exactly what side he belongs on. He's kind of poking fun at everybody as he goes, which I really do like. One final thing I loved about the support group. Did you notice when the lady walks into the room, how she's introduced to the group, or how she's asked, does she know where she is? She's asked, is she a friend of Nemo? So that she's there for the squid support group is she's a friend of Nemo. So we're all friends of Nemo, right?
Simon. His real friends call him Simon.
Nice.
Okay?
Finding Simon. Chris, do you want to take us off with your next point on this one?
Yeah, so this is kind of another confirmation from me, which was specifically about Senator Keane.
Yes.
When the attack happened at the graveyard, and we got some, let's say we all had a few hinky vibes about it.
As they'd say in Scooby-Doo, yes.
Exactly. Jinkies. I think he's going to be revealed as a bad guy. And that's what we do get in this. We get the introduction of, when Wade is brought to the 7th Cavalry. He's brought in front of their leader, and essentially their leader is, the 7th Cavalry's leader in that particular group, because we don't know if he's their Grand Master, but he's their leader. It's revealed to be Senator Keane.
Yes, absolutely. Now, remember, we do know that the 7th Cavalry is the representative group in Tulsa, certainly.
Yes.
I'm not sure how national they are, but he's definitely the leader of the Tulsa side.
Yes.
I sometimes get a little bit confused with the Leftovers, who had an organization, a group that was in the local area, and there was multiple groups across the country all called different things, effectively. And I'm not sure if that's the same in this story in The Watchmen, whether there's 7th Cavalry all across the country or whether there's other different groups. But it's possible 7th Cavalry is nationwide. Senator Keene, I love the reveal, really, that Senator Keene came to Tulsa and took over the 7th Cavalry, while Judd, the former police chief, took over the police to separate these two groups, because effectively the leaders of both groups are working together to make sure that there isn't massive incitement of violence against each other. That's at least what he says to Wade. Exactly. He says that after White Night, he didn't want it to happen again. So he's taking leadership of one group, Judd's taking leadership of the other. So I think it's really interesting what he's saying. I guess everybody has their side and everybody has their belief in what they're doing. So it'd be interesting if that's all true.
Yeah. And we know two facts. I should say we come to know two facts. The first, that, through the Pedopedia files, we are taught that Senator Keene's father was involved in the 7th Cavalry previously.
He was the former Grandmaster, that's right, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that led to some, it's kind of like a legacy in a college, I suppose. Mm-hmm. You're automatically in.
Yeah, it's what they basically said was that the former Grandmaster had the painting on the wall of their house, and that was the indicator to anybody that was from the cavalry that this is the Grand Master kind of thing, and he would pass it on to the next leader. And we know the painting was in Judd's house after he died, because that's where Sister Night saw it. That's where Angela saw it in there. I know I'm being pedantic, but this is the first time we've actually heard that Judd was the leader of the cavalry. We were questioning whether it was just that he passed the painting on to him because he's already dead. But obviously he wouldn't have done that. He would have passed it on to the next leader. So Judd is the leader. That was our indication. That's why it focused so solely on the painting on the wall. At the time, we didn't know the reason it was focusing on there was saying, this is here because he's the leader. So an interesting idea that they're leaders of each faction, but actually working together.
Yeah. And the interesting part from that is how he came to certain bits of knowledge. So his knowledge of the squid attack comes from his basically appointment to the head of the Department of Interior. When no one else wanted this job, it was ridiculous. It's a dead end. When he was a senator, or a young senator at that, he was appointed in there, and it came that he started basically finding files and videos and things like that. And on his first day, he was shown a video, and we'll get into that video later, but it's taken him that long to get it out. But that took him down the road of working with Judd. So it's this was very much a lot of revelations of things that we had guessed, but it's cementing these in now.
Or we could say they're giving us answers in this episode to all the questions that they've been building up for the first 5 episodes, right?
Sure.
There you go.
Sure.
So that's good.
Exactly.
I knew this was going to be an episode where we get answers. I'm delighted with some of the answers we're getting as well, because it means we're kind of on the right track. You kind of want to know that as you're halfway through a season.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh yeah, we guessed this right, and it was a good guess.
Exactly. John, we're in the medium point. I know that you've got some points about Senator Keene as well. Do you want to jump in with your point?
Yeah, mine's it started with a cabbage and it kind of in the back of a truck, and it kind of ends where effectively we have Looking Glass being entrapped. It is that reveal of Senator Keene a bit that he is behind the 7th Cavalry. I mean, he doesn't seem to believe in them. He seems to suggest them all like hired thugs, but it's the fact that he's after Looking Glass, that the whole setup of the support group, everything was just to try and bring him into contact with the 7th Cavalry and Senator Keene. So he does radio for help, but we hear that they've blocked his channel, And, he is effectively then, being asked to watch this, piece of footage of Adrian Veidt in his Ozymandias outfit. And I suppose the thing that struck me was just that, as the camera's, going between this footage and back to a unmasked Looking Glass, you kind of get the facial expressions that I was thinking, is he converting round to Keen's aims or the 7th Cavalry aims? Because I'm not too sure whether Senator Keen's aims are aligned with the 7th Cavalry. He seems to be just, it felt like he was just using them, and pretending to have their own views, but maybe it does, or he just thinks that they're a bunch of kind of, hired, hired fighters, the brawn in that sense. So I didn't quite know how aligned Keen was. I think it was just using the 7th Cavalry as a vehicle. So that's why I'm kind of saying, is this some kind of conversion of Looking Glass into this new kind of Rorschach by being exposed both to the 7th Cavalry and Senator Keen's aims? Or, is he converting to the 7th Cavalry, being that person that, ultimately writes a journal, because this episode is like a journal of his life anyway. So I thought that was really interesting that he too, he's technology adverse, so that he too kind of writes down everything, and that he becomes this new, Rorschach in a sense. But whether it's a conversion that ultimately, the hoax changes him to be suspicious of absolutely everything. And I just thought it was really well played here. And I really enjoyed the setup of it all. With, the woman, I didn't catch her name, but she's quite famous. I recognize her from a number of other things. The woman in the support group that entraps him, basically. But I really enjoyed this, and I just wonder whether we get to see him taking, it's fairly obvious he's got that Rorschach element to him with his fairly antisocial behavior, as well as the mask. But whether, he becomes, that even more cynical to the point where he will want to expose what Senator Keen has shown him, with the Ozymandias footage, rather than come on board. So I really enjoyed this. I thought this has massive potential.
Keen gave him, which was set up, do this thing for me, and we need you to do that because otherwise we'll destroy you. And if you do this for us, you'll work with us, and etc. All's going to be good. And Looking Glass does do the thing that he was asked to do. And then the ending of the episode is a hit squad about to go after him. So can we assume that Keen has already double-crossed Looking Glass?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I just thought it was really, it felt like the grenade being thrown into the series, and the fragments of that grenade could go anywhere. And I thought that was really exciting. I think it felt really pivotal to me as to how Looking Glass will respond here, both from his meeting with Senator Keen under false circumstances, knowing what he's doing, who he was, through to the footage, and as you say then, Chris, this idea that maybe there was some hit put on him after that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, yeah. And I wonder, the idea of Keen and Judd getting together to do what they're doing, it does feel like the plan that Veidt did in the 80s, right? It feels like he's looking at the world and going, well, there's these two factions, what are we going to do about it? And we'll manipulate both sides of the argument to get the outcome that we want, in the same way that Veidt manipulated the world using the squid. And we also hear that discussion between Looking Glass and Senator Keen, where they're talking about this transportation device that they're using to move the basketballs back and forth between two different rooms. And Looking Glass is going, you're going to use that, aren't you? You're going to drop another squid on the city of Tulsa. And Keen goes, no, we've got a much bigger plan than that. So really intriguing what he's actually going to do in the future, you know. I presume he's not going to drop 600 basketballs on the city of Tulsa. I presume it's much bigger than that. Think bigger.
800.
Christmas presents. It's going to be like Santa's sleigh has blown up in the sky. And all these Christmas presents.
Maybe they're trying to attract the Harlem Globetrotters to Tulsa. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the one thing that struck me on that scene, and you saying about Senator Keene and Judd having sort of directed everything, and I'm like going, I wonder if that's the case, because in the back of my mind, I was there going, how have they got this technology? So all of a sudden Lady True became a factor in that. Is she the modern day Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias in Tulsa, giving these guys tech to do something? And so that's the other thing, is there a trinity here of Lady True, Judd, the former and now dead chief of police, and then Senator Keene?
Yeah, entirely possible. I think one of the things I mentioned on the feedback section last week was that Lady True says something about Adrian Veidt, that his DNA is in everything that she does. So it feels like once she bought his company, she got the rights to this piece of equipment. Looking Glass rightly calls out that what they're testing was being tested on November 1st, the day before the attack in New York. The same piece of equipment was being tested in New York, and then the squid landed. So they're trying the same thing out right now. So it speaks back once again to Will saying to Lady True, in 3 days' time, Angela's going to know what's happening. So he sounds like he's also involved in the plan, of course, saying that he knows exactly what's going to happen with Senator Keene. Everybody's going to know in the world what they're doing. So really intriguing right now.
Yeah, definitely.
It's going to be interesting where this story goes and how it kind of goes from here. And it's a great analogy you used, John, there. By answering questions, a grenade's gone off. And then where does the shrapnel go?
There you go.
That's a really good one. But I think that's about time we move on to our next and final points.
The doomsday clock has been set to 3 minutes to midnight.
Just our small points about the episode at 3 minutes to midnight. Chris, you want to give us your small point, the final piece that you want to take out of the episode?
I lost a little bit of Chris here. All he's saying just at the beginning is that he finds it interesting, this small point that the 7th Cavalry have followed through with the plan because they need a scapegoat and they're going to hand over Sister Night. But he kept the rest of it. So
they give the FBI, they give Laurie Blake the Sister Night. And it's basically, he knows that Blake has bugged their phone and bugged the plant pot.
Yes, I do.
Was it the cactus?
The cactus, yes.
Yes.
What does she say? I'm the FBI, we bug shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't take offense, that's what we do. Love Laurie. Even for a moment in the episode, I love Laurie, she's great.
Yeah, and it's just, it was good to see, because he basically entraps Sister Night. Effectively, to a degree, ending their relationship, their partnership. They were not partners, quote unquote, but they were very close, to the point where Angela would go see Wade quite a lot and ask for help, and knew about his ex-wife and everything.
Yeah, but remember, they both called each other weird. So they both, even though they're both masked characters in this show, they both think each other's idea of how to mask themselves up, I guess, is weird. Interestingly, just want to underline it here because as it pops back into my head, remember Laurie was trying to work out why Sister Night had chosen nuns as her outfit, because clearly she has to have chosen something in her past that is the reason why she put on the mask. Interestingly, the next episode, Looking Glass, we find out the reason why he's got the mask on is because mirrors protected him back in 1985. So Laurie was right. That's what I find interesting. Laurie was absolutely right. Another masked character chose something from his past that protected him to design his full costume out. So maybe there is something in Sister Night's past. Maybe she was put in with nuns that took care of her and she took on their persona as her persona to fight in the streets. But I just like that Laurie was right. I think that should be the title of a point here.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Now that Blake has essentially got Sister Night in handcuffs for lying, evading the FBI, interfering with an investigation, serious charges, and especially since she's withholding illegal pharmaceuticals. In this case, the pills, the Will's pills that she gave to Wade, and Wade got analyzed by his ex-wife, who is a dog cloner or a pet cloner, a medical cloner, who likes to incinerate defective puppies quite quickly.
Whoa.
But anyway, we find out that those pills are pill memories in the form of a pill.
Right. Yeah.
And that's illegal tech. But so she was basically, Angela was in control of them, or was withholding them.
Right.
And then she's not, because she swallows them all at the end of this episode.
So now she'll remember everything that happened in the world ever.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting to see what will happen from all this, because she has gone against, and she is now considered a potential, like more than a potential suspect for the death of Judd.
Exactly. I have to say, though, since you pointed it out, that lab where Wade's ex works was fantastic. I love that as you go through, you're seeing loads of sets of twins dealing with the cloning, and you're kind of going, are they all clones, or are some of them twins or not? I'm not really too sure. I just thought it was a lovely touch, because it just seems like a really out there place where she is. And again, a massive piece of technology that we don't even have in our world now, but it's in their world, even though they're under loads of other technology. So, interesting.
True, but also remember, we have just also been introduced to other clones.
A lot of them, yes.
A lot of other clones in a faraway space. On a galaxy far, we're actually pretty close, we assume.
We can say.
Away. Which actually perfectly leads on to a character that John can talk about.
Yes.
John, do you want to give us your point?
Yeah, so my point is with that reveal of Adrian Veidt within the footage, and it just simply that, you know, knowing that we've had the Redfordians against the Nixonites and so on, within this world, that actually Robert Redford, the president-elect, has been put there by Adrian Veidt, that he has pulled the strings, cloned the right people, got the PR, all this kind of thing to squirm Robert Redford to the presidency. And even though, again, Robert Redford's agenda is seemingly one that is good, he's gotten there by Adrian Veidt, and I thought this was really good, because you just kind of then question Robert Redford as president, because Adrian Veidt is certainly someone who is ruthless. He will remove people, millions of people, if it serves his agenda, and just because of what's going on in the manor where he's trying to escape, you know, what is his agenda now? To what extent does it link with Lady True or not? Or are these two competing? So I really like that footage, because, yeah, again, it just undermines the foundations that you've had in the good president, Robert Redford. And because you know as well that Angela Abar is a Redfordian, you know that she's aligned with him, and it's like, to what extent then is Robert Redford doing stuff that is in support of Veidt's agenda, his new agenda? So yeah, it just it casts a bit of doubt onto the El Presidente.
You're right. It's such a weird alternate world where a president can be put in place by people that would use his power for their own benefit, isn't it? Just such a weird thing, you know?
No, it's,
I love when you have a sci-fi story that can tell a story that couldn't possibly happen in our world.
Well, it's not at all, absolutely. Facebook and Google put the president there now. We are going into Blade Runner territory, where corporations take over the world.
One other thing I absolutely love about the video, and you gotta like this, John, it made me think that Adrian Veidt is kind of like the Doctor Strange, the MCU's Doctor Strange of this universe. Like, he's seen every single possibility that could happen in the world and has planned for them. Because I love this moment where he's sitting there and, you know, he's going, congratulations to Redford for becoming president in 1992. And he's going, I'm recording this video on the 1st of November, 1985. Do you know how I know you're president? Because I made you there. I know I've made all of the moves for the next 7 years to get you to become the president. I love it. Did the de-age Jeremy Irons a lot, do you think, or not enough? Or
not enough for me. For me,
because we're talking 30 years later now, right?
Yeah, and the reason it wasn't enough for me was the fact that Marvel has shown us that you can de-age him to an extent, and anything after that, it kind of starts getting uncanny valley.
In fairness to Marvel have done a great job on some of the people that they've de-aged, but it's cost millions. And they're not going to blow that much budget on one episode of a TV show. And I totally get that. Definitely not asking them to do that. I was just wondering whether they could have got a different actor in to portray him in his 30s as opposed to in his 60s, or in his 40s as opposed to his 70s, whatever way they wanted to do it.
He does have a
works.
son. Am I right in saying Jeremy Irons has a son?
Maybe.
I think he does. I think he has a son, or yes, Max Irons, who's also with just amazing name. But
that is a magnificent name. Fantastic job there, Jeremy. Well done.
Yeah, and he does look quite like him. He was in Terminal, Condor, a few other kind of
cool.
Terminal is one I know him from because he's in with Margaret.
Oh, thankfully those are two separate movies, because Terminal Condor sounded really bad.
Hey, it could be good. Yeah, I would have just got his son to play it for all of 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Or whatever the 5 minutes was, because he was supposed to be in his late 20s when this happened. No, 30s. That age group.
I suppose that we don't know. We don't know for definite. 30s or 40s, I would say. It would be roughly the age group for Adrian Veidt. I love the scene,
yes.
to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't really want to come down too hard on the scene because they didn't de-age him, because again, it's Jeremy Irons talking to camera, and he's so good. His voice is so good. He sounds so powerful. And again, this idea where he's got that confidence of going to the future president in 7 years' time. I put you there. Believe in what I did. I didn't just do that. That squid thing that you've all been worried about, I also created that. I also planned meticulously what was going to happen and kill 3 million people in New York, and the psionic wave that's sent out by the landing of the squid will also affect millions more people across the country, send fear through their system so they'll leave New York, and then all band together against this common foe, because that's just how good I am, you know? Nobody else can pull it off, whether they are the son and look like Jeremy Irons. He's just a brilliant actor to be able to pull that off. I think it's so good.
I have to agree with you. Sorry. It's not that I was coming down on it. No. I think it's true. But actually perfectly, because we did get a good bit more Jeremy Irons in this episode. So I believe, Derek, you want to take this one away?
Do you know, after so many weeks on this show of seeing Jeremy Irons and his contraptions to fire people out into space or out of the dome, I loved seeing the other side of the dome this time. How cool was that when we actually realize how many, I suppose, people have been out there? He's still surrounded by Mr. Phillips and Miss Crookshanks as he puts himself into his own spacesuit and gets fired off by catapult out into space onto a planet. And then suddenly we see hundreds and hundreds of bodies of Mr. Phillips, and I think we see quite a few Miss Crookshanks as well.
Yep.
Miss Crookshanks.
He's an equal opportunist catapultist.
Exactly. In the past, we've only really seen him use Mr. Phillips for all the experiments. We haven't really seen much of her being used as being fired off into space, but we did see him kill quite a few Miss Crookshanks in the past as well. But I suppose one final horrible moment for these bodies that have been sent off and die in the vastness of this planet is that he then uses multiples of their bodies to spell out "save me" on the planet's surface and is about to get saved. Its satellite flies overhead and sees this spelled out "save me" as he's dragged back in by the gamekeeper. Another Mr. Phillips drags him back inside that dome again and kicks seven shades out of him, saying our God has left us. So is this all of the clones turning on Veidt? Will Veidt survive? Because at the end of the episode, he seems to be pretty bruised, battered, and bloody, with another kick to the face looming. So, are they saying that this is Veidt gone? They no longer have to respect him. They no longer have to follow his orders. Have the lunatics taken over the asylum? I guess is the question at the end of the episode.
And that's kind of where I was going. That maybe in all the years, this may be self-imposed exile. And now at a certain point, not self-imposed, but he agreed to it. It was just like, you're either going to die or we're going to exile you. Go to exile. You'll have a steady supply of servants. But here's the rules you must follow.
Yeah.
And now, it wasn't a full-on prison. It was more just exile. Again, I've used that word a lot, but that type of...
Like Napoleon.
Absolutely, like, and Napoleon is one of his heroes, basically, as well. So we know that from the comics that Napoleon was one of his heroes. And I suppose, interestingly, he did have that line saying when he arrived first, the place was a paradise. So you're right, Chris. It does sound like he did agree to go into this place, and then over the many years he's been there, he's realized this is absolutely a prison. This is just like a prison that he would have been on Earth. So maybe his choices were, well, you could either go to a prison or you can go to this paradise exile where you're not on Earth. Okay, grand, I'll go to this paradise exile. That sounds great. Oh, it's just a prison, just like it would have been if I was sitting in amongst concrete walls, except it looks a bit nicer.
Exactly. And it gets interesting to see then as well that again, the questions start building in my mind. Who exiled him? What is he on Mars? Well, he's not on Mars. We know that. Potentially the moon.
Yeah,
it's grey
exactly.
rock.
Yeah.
That's
what I was thinking. I think you could see the Earth behind as well, so it's pretty close to Earth.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's the moon. It's intriguing. Definitely want to see what's going to happen with that character. If he's going to be alive in the next episode, as I say, and being kicked in the face repeatedly is not a good sign for a man of like him.
No.
Also, just one final thing about Adrian Veidt there. Remember the arrogance and confidence you saw on the video with this guy, as I said, who sees the future and can plan for all eventualities. Now he's on a planet with clones who, when he first finds them, they can't even speak, they can't think for themselves. So maybe it's just his absolute hell is being surrounded by idiots who will do everything that he says, basically. They're just clones. They're just servants. So he's in hell because he has nothing to challenge his brain capacity. So this is why he's trying to get out of the prison, is because that's the only thing that's challenging his brain capacity. How do I get out of this situation? So maybe it's just that. Maybe he's been planning to get out of here because it's the only thing to keep his mind working. He's the most intelligent man on Earth. Now he's on a different planet. So.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. It's all going to come out what happened post the video. So what else happened kind of from recording of it? Because in the comic books, he gets away with it to a degree. His plan comes to fruition. He's not imprisoned or castrated but yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I think it's about time we move on to our final points for this episode.
The doomsday clock is now at 2 minutes. I repeat, 2 minutes to midnight.
Yes, at 2 minutes to midnight, we are on to our Easter eggs and comic connections, things that you may have noticed. Obviously, the opening scene being the comic book brought to life is quite fantastic. Nothing more really that I could think of to pick out there. I absolutely loved the use of the 80s song Careless Whisper by George Michael. I adored the use of that as you hear it in the background. And then after the fall of the squid, it slows down, it's broken, it's a different version of the track. And then throughout the episode, it's almost the theme of Looking Glass is being played on the piano multiple times in much slower versions, because it was this defining moment for the character of Wade before he became Looking Glass. So thought that was interesting. One little thing just to come back on something we mentioned back in episode 2, I think, where they said only 3 people survived, the White Knight. We thought that was Judd, Angela and Looking Glass. We find out here that Looking Glass actually joined the police department after White Knight. Only at the point when he found out that they could wear masks was when he joined the police force. So he wasn't an officer before that. So thought that was quite interesting. And we don't know who the third person is now. Oh well.
So just a very small one from me, which is I actually want to give credit to both Derek and IMDb on this one. Because I just think this is so cool. The episode title is a quote from 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. And it's if there were...
No, it's not, Chris. 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea. You could swim 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yes. It's actually 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea was the first name of the title. And then people were like, Jules, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? That makes no sense. And he goes, do you know what? I'll actually edit it and we'll call it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a better title in retrospect, but 2000 Leagues Under the Sea was pretty cool. Everything was just very shallow, even the book.
Yeah, the actual quote was, if there was no thunder, men would have little fear of lightning. And that's the kind of whole point of this scene, isn't it?
You know, the squid being dropped in New York is the thunder and makes people afraid of fighting against each other, of dropping nuclear weapons on each other, because they can see the devastation on one city of the squid. So, yeah, fascinating. Really, really good choice.
Yeah, it was a nice way when you kind of read back, and this is one of the reasons I love this. The show in particular is there's so many little details that just completely go over your head, but when you dig into them, you're like, okay, this is good.
Yeah, absolutely. My final one for this time is Hooded Justice in American Hero Story, this episode, with his boyfriend. Really interesting that we see in here his boyfriend saying, I know you're beautiful underneath the mask, take it off. And he says, I will never reveal my face to anyone at all. So once again, showing that not even Captain Metropolis, his partner, knows what he looks like underneath the mask. So, you know, once again, this idea that Will could possibly be this character of Hooded Justice, because maybe not anything at all that anybody knows about him or anything that's in the show is real. Maybe it's all made up, you know? With that said, John, what did you think of episode 5 of Watchmen, Little Fear of Lightning?
I really enjoyed the episode. I absolutely would give this a 4.5. Giant deep fried calamari with chili and salt and pepper out of 5. Yes. I really enjoyed the backstory, the journal, if you will, of Wade, of Looking Glass. I thought it was really good, and I loved the twist of getting the 7th Cavalry, and him chasing that red herring, and you have the reveal of, Senator Keene under one of the masks. You have the revelation of, Ozymandias, putting Robert Redford on the throne. And, you know, I just thought this really was, a good mix up. It gave a lot of answers, as you've been saying. But certainly, it was, a really good episode. You have Angela getting arrested. You have Looking Glass, you know, sort of turning, in this. So, it was really good to see. And it was nice just to understand what those pills were, as well. So, yeah, I thought this was a real solid episode. Really enjoyed it.
Definitely. Yeah, nice to find out what those pills are. I still don't understand what they are. I'll have to wait till the next episode. I may find out or understand them a bit more next episode. At least we had some more investigation on that side. Everybody was involved in it, definitely. For me, yeah, a really good episode. Totally with you, John. I think they're getting better every week. And it's really weird when you go, this episode is amazing. The next episode is also amazing and better than last week's, you know, which just means the quality of the show is really good. Something I'm looking forward to every single time we get to watch a new episode. So really excited to see episode 6 next week. Chris, what did you think of this episode?
For me, it was a lot slower, what was happening and the motivations. And that's what we got here. This slowed down, but it was still enough. It gave us enough answers and actually posed a few more questions. Not many questions in comparison to the last 4, but just enough to make you go, oh, okay, hold on. So I really enjoyed this episode. It wasn't as hard hitting, to me, but it still packed enough of a punch that I'm dying to see episode 6 and poor Ozymandias. Like, what's he doing on the moon? We probably won't find that out to episode 9, but you know what I mean.
Yes, really looking forward to seeing more of what's happening to Mr. Veidt up there with his now attacking clones saying their god is gone. That's really fascinating. That's it for our episode of the Watchmen podcast on TV Podcast Industries. Look out for our feedback podcast, the Bulletin of our Atomic Watchers. We normally get those out before the next episode airs. We should have that out later on this week. Send in your thoughts to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or join us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. I'll have a spoiler post up there every week for the episodes. Just go in there and share your thoughts.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you stay subscribed to the podcast, and if you enjoy what you hear, why not share it with your friends, because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. And sure, if you're already sharing it, why not just jump in and give us an L review as well. 5 stars is best stars.
Or 52 stars, actually. Then you can be like the American flag.
There you go.
Excellent.
Hooray.
And of course, if you want to support us, you can go over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries and throw us a couple of bucks, keep the lights on and keep the podcast going. We'll be back on Monday, the 18th of November with Watchmen episode 6, This Extraordinary Being. John, do you want to give us the official synopsis for that episode?
Sure. Deep under the influence of nostalgia, Angela gets a first-hand account of her grandfather's journey.
Interesting.
So she's basically whacked off her face on drugs. And she goes to another zone.
Yes. Was nostalgia the perfume that was in The Watchmen? I suddenly have that in my head.
Oh, maybe,
I think
yes.
it was.
Yeah. I certainly have that in my head. Interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing episode 6 now. Bye-bye, watchers. Keep watching The Watchmen.
Watch those guys.
As always, fellow watchers, thank you so much for listening. It's been a pleasure. Remember, keep watching and keep listening. Bye.